All right, let's get started. So I made kind of a list, a new recoil guide on how to shoot guns better. This is kind of scuffed. This is just on my notepad, but I wrote some of the problems, what the differences are between really good players and not, and what actually has an effect on aim cone and like, you know, aim ability, stuff like that. What still has a high skill ceiling in this game that you can work on, and what are the relevant guns that still require some skill that you can really push to the next level, and what can you do in your daily Rust experience to get better at certain aspects. All right, so the problem is a lot of people think aim cone is really bad. Obviously, I'm in the same boat. I hate aim cone. Aim cone right now is like trying to pee in the morning. You miss everywhere. It goes everywhere. You aim straight in the middle of the toilet bowl. It still goes on the side. Your mom yells at you, etc. And it's a survival game first and foremost. So aim cone will be a part of the game. And another problem is recoil is random instead of learned. So it's very dumbed down. It used to be like a thing where you kind of go on an S pattern like this, and it was very skillful. Like some people were so good at that, and they were able to just rely on that and become one of the best players in Rust. But now it's just straight up just pull down. Anybody can do it. I feel like even if you tell your dad or your granddad to just come play Rust for a bit, they'll figure it out in like an hour maybe. All right, so first we're going to talk about what actually has an effect on the aim cone or your recoil or your aim ability. So the first one is the hollow sight. Obviously, we're going to talk about the attachments. The hollow sight has better sight for a lot of weapons, including this one right here. This sight is hot garbage. So for stuff that has bad sight, you want to put on the hollow sight. It gives 10% accuracy and 2x zoom, which makes it a lot easier to aim. And what you can do here is you have the graphics.vm. A lot of people play still with this thing. It's kind of preference. This just makes it so your aim model is a lot bigger or smaller. So you're aimed a lot more like this. But for me, I play with it off. I think I aim a lot better when it's a lot smaller. Obviously, you want to have a laser on, and it has to be on, by the way. You can check because there's a white circle here when it's on. This gives 49% accuracy. So what this does is just it tightens the aim cone basically. So if you want to have the best chance at hitting your shots, then you want to have a hollow sight plus a laser sight. But I don't think it's needed at all for a lot of weapons, as long as you're using it correctly. Handmade sight. So for a lot of MP5s, you probably don't need this anymore because we have the hJune MP5 and the iron sight is amazing. Best iron sight in the game. But then back in the day, with a really shitty sight like this one and you don't have a hollow sight, it might be good to actually use a handmade sight because this just makes the graphics.vm FOV scale into like -1 basically because it's 0.5x. So it's a lot more zoomed out. So for guns like SAR and like tapping weapons, I think it's actually good. I've seen a lot of people use this and have a lot of success, especially with MP5 and stuff too. Anything that requires like very precision aiming, I think the handmade sight is underrated. Another thing is your sensitivity. It used to be really good to have low sensitivity with learnable recoils because you had a lot more accuracy on what movement you're doing. You were able to basically go like this, so you have less room for error, right? If you have higher sense with learnable recoils, you'd be moving like this to control the AK. And if you have low sense, you're moving it like this, so you have less chance of messing it up. But now, because you have to be really good at stance spraying, like right now, if I want to peek this guy, I don't want to go all the way up here and crouch and then spray. You got to be good at just controlling the recoil, even when standing up. And when you stand up in this game, recoil is like exaggerated by 2 times. So you have to have higher sense and make sure your ADS is what's my sensitivity? It's 0.625 right now. It used to be 0.5 for me. And I used to play ADS sensitivity at 0.8. Now I have it at 1. So which basically means that it's just default. So mine is a lot higher. I think the number one thing for your sensitivity is you want to see, can you comfortably do a 180 with one half swipe? So if I'm doing a half swipe, that's like half of my mouse pad. If I do a full swipe like this, for me, that's 360. That's how I determine what sensitivity is good for me. Because if I'm getting shot like this and I want to do a swipe really fast and shoot from someone behind, then you need to do that quickly, right? You don't want to have too low of a sense where you're going like multiple swipes to do a 360 or like 180. Another thing is FPS. I have a super giga computer, and if I'm playing this game at like 50 FPS versus my 200 right now, I will be way worse of a player. You need to have good FPS, and the best way to have good FPS, not sponsored, but please sponsor me, AMD, is the AMD X3D CPUs. If you have one of these, the 5800 X3D, the 7800 X3Ds, the 7950 X3D, which I have, that with the 3D cache, it will give you giga FPS in Rust. So having good FPS is really good, and high refresh rate on your monitor, but these are expensive, and it's not 100% required to be very good. But if you want to be the very best, I think you have to have it. In terms of gear, you need a good mouse. I use a Superlight G Pro. I also have the kind of like a knockoff of Hyperglides. Those are the mouse skates. And you want to make sure you have a very clean mouse pad at all times. If you have a cloth one, I used to use the Logitech one. I had to clean it every 2 months, or else all the grime and sweat of you playing Rust, obviously, it will make it so that it's not as smooth anymore. And this one I have to wipe down as well. So make sure you have fresh mouse skates, because it also wears down the more you use it. And I think crosshair is very important in this game, partially because, actually mostly because, wherever you aim, in the middle of the screen is where your bullet goes. So even if your aim is like right here, from like your iron sight moving there, while it goes from like right to left here, right? It always goes middle of the screen. So basically you can quick scope a lot. Like even if you have like an L96 without a scope, like how do you know where you're shooting? I know because I have a crosshair, and it's completely legal. It's allowed by FacePunch. You can use Steam or like monitors for crosshairs, or what I used to do is I just put like a piece of tape or something. So those are all the things that has an effect on your aim ability. So what still has high skill ceiling in the game? I think a very underrated thing right now is stand spraying and recoil compensation. You know what? Let's actually talk about the relevant guns that still require some skill. For me, it's the AK, LR, MP5, and maybe custom Thompson, obviously. And then we have the L90, not the L96. We have Thompson, we have SAR, and Python. I kind of attribute this to the same thing. It's kind of like single shooters, semi-auto, and I would only use this if I don't have any other weapons. And obviously M249, LMG, it's busted. It's not as bad as people think right now. So the difference between a really good player, a bad player, and the top tier players is like doing everything that I'm explaining and doing it all at once without thinking. So first up is the AK. So this is shooting the AK while you're sitting down. It's a lot more easier, obviously. And the aim is a lot more manageable, even from long distance. And you can quite easily spray transfer between different players that you're shooting at. But it gets a lot harder when we start doing the stand spray that I'm talking about. And AK stand spray is very, very important, because a lot of the times you're fighting at uneven terrain. So if you're shooting this guy, you don't want to sit down and then expose your whole body before you sit down and shoot, right? So standing, I'm not crouching at all. Obviously, your AK will go from like this to this sporadic. But once you learn how much you have to pull down, you can actually still fight like you used to with the old recoil. You can't do it from like 200 meters like you used to. But if you go for center mass and you control the recoil, you're gonna have a huge advantage over players that don't know how to stand spray. And next up is the LR. I would consider this weapon like, I would say it's worse than MP5 and better than Thompson. Better than Thompson. It does the same damage as a SAR. But I would say the recoil is a little bit more annoying. You control the recoil. This one goes pretty much straight up. But for me, it feels a little bit weird when I shoot it. There's also burst mode for this as well. But personally, it's a lot worse than the MP5. But if you're someone that's not good at aiming or recoil control, because not everybody can even do this, believe it or not, like just pulling down like that, it's a lot harder for some people that are not used to PC gaming. So if you use the burst, you barely have to pull down. All you need to do is put your crosshair to the person. Being good at a video game is not trying to be the best. It's how good can you get with your current potential and skill level. And you gotta know your weaknesses and your strengths very well to maximize that potential. Next up is the MP5. I think this is one of the best weapons in the game now. I think it's my favorite. This is why I had the hJune MP5 skin with a insane iron sight where you probably don't need a hall sight anymore, but I'll use it for now. Without it, it looks like this. And then the next up is the Thompson. I think this is the most hated gun in the game right now because of the aim cone. So right now I'm using a laser and hollow, but let's say we don't use it. People cry about this weapon the most, and I do as well. This is a very frustrating weapon, and I feel like whenever you use this, it feels very RNG. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to use. And I could even get rid of the tack gloves. It doesn't matter, honestly. I'm going to be showing you in this tutorial on how to shoot these weapons better so that you're not left wondering, why does my gun not hit anything when I see someone else use it and they're hitting everything from like 2 times the range. So the Thompson is in a very weird spot in the meta right now. Do you tap it? Do you spray it? Like, what do you do? Do you aim at the head level? Do you aim at the chest level? But honestly, if you know the weakness of this gun and work around it, this gun is way more reliable than you think. And the SAR, honestly, there's not much to really talk about here. It's pretty accurate. It uses 5.5. It's a semi-auto. Aim at the head or the chest. The Python, though, I think is very underrated. So many people do not use this gun because they think it's a gun where you go like this. A lot of people use a Python like that. Obviously very exaggerated, but if you see this, the damage per shot is actually higher than the AK. It actually does more damage. 55, 50. This is a 6-bullet AK. If you know how to control the recoil properly, this could be very deadly spraying it. Not a lot of people use it as a spray weapon, but if you get good at controlling just the vertical recoil, you can shoot it fast, you can aim at the head, or you can spray at people, or if you're standing, you can also use it as a... Like, look at this. You just gotta think of it not as a semi-auto, but if you think about it like you're spraying a weapon that has really high recoil, it's a lot easier to control the Python. And it's super accurate too. And even when I'm standing like this, I can be super accurate as long as I know, like, between each shot, I know that it's gonna go up by this much. So every time I shoot and press the left click button, I'm bringing it down again. Like, consciously, I'm just bringing it down just like that. And then once you get faster at that, you can confidently spray it, even when you're standing. So Python is very underrated. And obviously LMG is really good. But this gun is very inaccurate the first 6 bullets. However, there's one thing that most people don't know is that it's almost entirely accurate on the first shot. So what I mean by this is, if I'm using it like this, just normally, this is how most people use it, just as a spray weapon. And sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, especially from long range. One thing that's very underutilized, and I've only seen a few top tier players do this, is actually tapping with it. Getting this gun from oil rig or cargo really early on wipe is actually insane because you body shot, headshot pretty much every body armor in the game until they get full gear. And if you're just tapping like this, with just 4, 5, 5, 6, you probably kill one guy. And from really far range too, it's very effective. And you don't even need an 8x. All you need to do is you just need to know the cooldown between each shot and it resetting the recoil and the aim cone. If you shoot it like this, it's just gonna be like you're spraying it. Look how wide the thing is going. But if you know the cooldown between each shot and when the aim cone resets, you can be so accurate with this gun. And obviously the damage is insane. 58. M2 is even better at 65. This is essentially the same thing. The recoil is quite heavy on this one. One of it goes down left and the other goes down right. So if I'm controlling the M2, I need to control it more to the left and the LMG is more to the right. But one thing about this weapon is most people are getting really good with this, where people are using this to wall PvP because it does the most damage in the game. You can hip fire and you can stand spray with this. So people face check people with this weapon, and if they're really good at stand spraying with the M2, they just face check. And you cannot beat this weapon close range. Like, let's say this guy's coming to my wall, I jump. This guy's just... He does not exist anymore. Alright, so those are the weapons that require some kind of skill. So what still has high skill ceiling? So stand spraying, like I showed you, it's very situational. Boom. You can like stand spray to peek your little head and head peek people. And also when you're stand strafing, if you're crouching, you're a lot slower. And you can ape people. Like when you're pushing people, it's good to stand spray. Like when you're holding, obviously, you can just make sure you're hitting as much shots as possible by crouching. But if you're aping people, you need to start shooting people while you're moving, right? That's when stand spraying is good. When you're fighting in obstacles and when you're Wing people. Another one is knowing when to spray, when to burst, and when to tap. So this is very important, guys. This applies to every single gun. Every single gun has a different distance where you have to start bursting. So AK-47, I think it's something like 150 meters you can still spray, but anything past that you want to burst. Or if you're shooting at someone coming in a minicopter, you want to burst at them to make sure you're accurate. If they're really far away, like 250 meters, then you want to tap, because the AK tapping is very, very accurate. Obviously from this range, you want to spray because you want to fire as many bullets as possible. But if someone is really far away, so if I'm going like here, I think from this range you can still spray with the AK. But like maybe this range or like maybe that range, if you start bursting, you're gonna see that you're shooting way more. And these are bots that we're shooting at. Real players only have 100 HP. If you hit 4 or 5 shots, they're gonna be dead no matter what, right? Stop spraying, and it's okay to burst. Especially when you think, oh man, I'm whiffing everything, or my aim cone is really bad. You want to stop spraying and reset your recoil and your aim cone. Like, let's say I'm like, oh shoot, I'm whiffing, but then people keep shooting instead of stopping. Real good players will be like, oh shoot, I'm whiffing. Oh, I didn't whiff there, but oh, I'm whiffing, and then they stop, and then they shoot again. LR obviously has a lot more aim cone. You can't do what you do with the AK. However, this gun right here, this MP5, it might actually have even more range than the AK. And a lot of people think SMGs have no range in this game. And I would argue yes, for like Thompson and custom. But MP5, ever since they buff the burst mode, it's crazy, guys. It's actually crazy. So from this range, I would say from like this range, I would always spray my MP5. But once you get to a certain point, you're gonna start feeling like, man, I'm not hitting any shot. Like, I would not spray from that range. At that point, I'll be bursting with any other weapon. But this weapon has a burst mode. And this goes straight. I think this might be the most casual thing Face Punch has ever added to this game. And not a lot of people use it. It's actually ridiculous. This essentially removes the aim cone from the SMG, from the MP5. Even from large distances. Here, let's go to a distance thing here. Even if I go like 200 meters away. I'm 200 meters away. As long as I know where I'm shooting. The MP5 goes almost straight. And especially with a Thompson is very important. Thompson is so important knowing when to burst. Especially with no attachments. If you start spraying, a lot of people like to spray right at the head level because that's what people used to do back in the old Recoil days where you're trying to go for the triples, right? So people would probably shoot right here, no leading shots, just aim straight at the head. Even on this kind of guy, you would aim straight at the head. You won't have the best success with an aim cone heavy weapon like Thompson if you shoot straight at the head. You want to go for center mass because you know aim cone is going to go. If you shoot here, it might go like a radius of this, right? If you shoot right here, the bullet could go anywhere here in this radius. So what do? You shoot straight at the body so that even if you miss, it will still hit something. And more often than not, aiming at the body like this will net you more headshots. Like I'm going for center mass here. And I'm actually getting more headshots than I would think. And custom, I think, is very underrated as well. Like I kind of love the custom because it just basically has no recoil. For someone that might not be good at recoil compensation, it's just a very fun gun, especially with a hollow. It does less damage though. I don't know. I love hearing the headshots when I use the custom. All right, next up is pre-firing. If you're fighting with some walls, maybe. Let's say you're walled. You know this guy's right here. You can do some jiggle peeks to see if that guy's right there. And or if this guy's about to peek you from like, let's say this guy's gonna peek you like this. You can pre-fire like that. Just knowing information, like you can just do little peeks like that, and then you can pre-fire, right? If you know if someone's coming, you want to pre-fire. Just being ahead of the curve. If you shoot first, chances are you're gonna win the fight. Knowing when to peek and when to stop. So on the same vein, let's say I peek from here and it's a 1v1. This guy's not looking at me. What do? I shoot on him. Okay. Scenario 2. I peek here. There's 3 people on my screen. One guy here, one guy there, one guy there. They're all shooting at me. Boom. What do I decide? Do I kill this one guy and then die? Or instead of even shooting, I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna peek that. And just knowing, like letting your ego down and being like, okay, this is not a smart fight that I should take. Like I'm gonna fall back. Like even you could do a little bit of damage. Like you could do a little bit of damage and then reposition and then like isolate him and then finish him off, you know? It's a lot better to do that rather than just like going out in the open and fighting 2 guys and just committing to it. You gotta know which fight to take and which fight to just be like, I'm gonna reposition. That's also the same thing as isolating. You wanna always isolate to have 1v1 fights instead of 1v2s. Like it's fun having like spray transfer fights like boom, boom, boom. But if you're versing good players, it's gonna be really difficult to kill 2 guys before they kill you. Another thing is positioning. So not just using camo and silencer and being in a bush somewhere, but you gotta know where is the safest spot for me in this general area and the most advantageous spot at all times. And you always have to move to that position. So I think the easiest thing is, let's say I kill this guy, that's his teammate. I kill him. If I stay right here and then peek again, that guy knows I'm coming from here. So he's gonna know, he's gonna have a advantageous spot on me. But if I kill that guy's aiming at this wall. And then I like go all the way back to a different position and I shoot him from here. all of a sudden, this guy's looking at this wall, thinking, okay, is this gonna peek from here? And the more time passes, the more he has to think. Can he be here? Can this guy be here? Can this guy be here? Or did he flank all the way around the trees? And could he be behind me? You want to create that kind of like fear. And positioning and like making yourself mysterious is very, very key. Another thing is distance compensation. So this is very important, especially with the Thompson. Like, I think I already explained this, but you don't want to aim straight at the person, especially if they're going left to right or right to left. If I aim straight at the person like this and I shoot my Thompson, I hit 2 shots. But if I aim where they're going, let's find a different one. If I aim where they're going, okay, why are they moving like that? If I aim where they're going instead of where they are at right now, I will hit way more shots. Especially with the Thompson. You need to know how fast does a 5.56 travel, how fast does a 9mm travel, how fast does it travel if I have HVs, or which gun. Like, for example, like L96, that has way more range. This is what it means. The range, the L96, you don't have to lead at all because it has so much range. But the MP5, 81, AK, 188. So just using these numbers, when I shoot at a guy that's 100 meters away from me with an AK, I'm aiming straight at the body and I'm going to hit them. However, if I use a Thompson that only has 90 range, chances are I'm not going to hit them if I'm aiming straight at them. But if I move my crosshair a little bit further ahead, okay, these bots are griefing me, but as you saw there, I'm not actually aiming at the person. I'm aiming at where they're going, and I am hitting way more shots. So a lot of people blame aim cone when they're simply just not leading correctly, or they're simply just not aiming at the center mass. So make sure you always remember that whenever you're fighting people from distance. Another one is you need aim. Like, you need to be good at aiming. Like, a lot of people are bad at aiming, and this is extremely prevalent in the old Recoil. People were good at recoil control, but if you see them in a video taking down a helicopter, their tracking is shit, their aim is shit, and now more than ever, aim is important. Tracking is important because recoil is not as important anymore. So if you want to work on your aim, it might be a good idea to just do some exercises where you're going from here to 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 here, and then go even faster. Or you can try doing some flicking exercises. So going from here to like here. You could do some tracking exercises. I think this was in this one. What I used to do is I used to practice tracking on this one, and then practice tracking left side, and then practice tracking left side, and then straight transfer to the other one. Another thing is awareness. How many players are you fighting? Where is your weak angles? And where can enemies come from? So this is, I think, just having game experience and also just experience on the map that you're playing. For example, if you have a base, let's say you kill someone, you see that their name is Snuffy Fluffy, and you know Snuffy Fluffy lives over there. Now you know, like, I killed this guy, now he's gonna come from there. He's gonna find my ass. Like, this guy's mad that I killed him, he's gonna come from there. So even if I'm fighting someone there, I'm always aware. I might get ganked from somewhere here. Or my base is over here. So now I know this wall can be like a representation of where I cannot be shot by. So now I can use this as my back and I can fight. So having awareness like that and knowing where people come from is very important. What is like the common thing that these guys do? Like, let's say you fought a group like 3 times, and every single time you fought them, they always came out re-geared. But some groups just don't come back. Like, you can kind of like read on the patterns on how people react and how people play, and then act accordingly, depending on what name you see. Another one is composure, but honestly, the more you play, the more you become a psychopath in this game, so don't worry about it. The more you play, you're not gonna get scared, you're not gonna get gear fear. Just don't ever get to a point where you don't get excited anymore, because that's when you burn out. Also, knowing when to push versus holding. A lot of people just always go for the W mentality. Like, you know this place is getting held by like 4 people, you don't want to push. You want to hold a position if you have a good position and kill at least like 3 or 4 until it's safe for you to push. So if you have a spot like this, right? and there's nobody that can flank you from behind, and everyone's like, you know, over there, and it's hard for them to shoot you back. Like you want to keep this position, especially if your teammates are dead. Then you want to hold and cover for them instead of like pushing in. Then sometimes you gotta ape, and that's when the standing spray comes in handy, right? Because a lot of people, they're like shoot and then they're like, okay, well this guy's not gonna peek me, so I'm gonna med. And while you're medding, you just ape this guy, and people won't expect it. Also, knowing the different peaks. So if you go to oil rig, there's actually some places where you can only see through them if you have your object quality at 0 or like 20 or something. So you can like do like some cheesy peaks. If you play oil rig a lot, you need to know those things. I would recommend watching someone that plays oil rig a lot. I'm not going to show it in this video. Another thing is like jump peaks. So if people don't know, you don't actually have to be on solid ground. You can actually start shooting as soon as you have your feet in contact with something. So if it's like this, a lot of people that do wall PvP nowadays, they peek the wall like this. When you're doing wall PvP, you're kind of expecting like this guy to peek out like this. And if they're gonna peek out like this, you're holding like this. I'm holding here. But then if this guy jumps out and is like this, your crosshair from here is so hard to like go up. And then this guy already double headshot you. So getting good at stuff like that and different kinds of peaks is very important. Knowing the different types of peaks and knowing which peaks are good for each obstacle or like each situation is crucial. Another one is defense. So I talk about strafing. It's really important to hit as many shots as possible on the enemy, but it's also equally important to make it really hard for them to shoot you. So this could be minimizing exposure to the enemy while shooting or scouting or getting information. You could strafe, you could have different kinds of movement. This is really important because if you're fighting this guy, I can see his entire body here, but he can only see the top half of my body. So I already have an advantage. But if I was here, this guy can see everything. I feel exposed right now. So instead of fighting him here, what I could do is I could use a combination of like different kind of peaks and stand strafing. And then instead of fighting him like this, I could be fighting him like this. And it's so annoying to fight players like this that use the terrain well and go for like really smart peaks. I see so many players that just crouch, stand completely still, and then aim. Obviously, this will give you the best chance at hitting every shot. However, if you're sitting like this, I could just go like tap, 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 and you're dead. That's no defense. That's all offense, no defense. But if I was someone that was shooting someone like this, I'm standing, I'm strafing, I'm making sure I don't have a readable pattern. I'm also using the terrain. Instead of my crosshair just being here to kill the guy, I would have to track him like this, and I would have to like aim at little heads that peek. And that's how to gain an advantage in even small like hill PvP fights like this. It's not just about hitting more shots. It's about how hard you're making it for the other player to hit you. So we talked about this already. These are the relevant guns that I think require some skill, like P2, compound bow, like maybe not compound bow, like bolt, L96. They don't require that much skill. You just aim and click. So what can you do to get better in Rust then? You know all the things that you have to work on. What can you do? How can you apply this to your actual Rust experience? So if you want the best kind of awareness and game sense, I would recommend you to play solo on any server. Because playing solo, you can only rely on yourself. And you have to be hyper aware of who you're fighting, where you're at, and is it safe to even fight in the first place? And having game sense to like only loot the things that you need and getting out, knowing when to get out, knowing when to push in, knowing when to loot. All of these things you only think about when you play solo because you're in such a vulnerable position. I learned most of my game sense by playing like 5,000, 6,000 hours of solo, especially early on. If you want to work on teamwork, comms, anything like that, like strategy, I would recommend playing 3 to 4. I personally love playing duo because that's when it really shines. It feels like you're playing solo, but you have one person to rely on, and it's really easy to coordinate. If you want to work on having organic PvP experiences like roams, like raids, and you don't want to waste too much time, I would recommend playing modded. Not too modded, obviously, not like Battlefield, but maybe 2x, 3x's. Those tend to have a lot more PvP. So if you play 10 hours, maybe you'll have 5 hours of PvP. But if you play vanilla, maybe you would only have 1 hour of PvP. So that's more usage of your time. If you want to get better at gunplay, I would recommend aim train servers like this that I was on. It's Rustoria Training Grounds, or RTG. This is where I usually warm up, but there's a lot of other servers out there as well. You can go to like scrims, you can go to like FFA death matches, and just places where you can just shoot people and fight real players. And that's how you'll get good at shooting the weapons. And in terms of decision making, I would 100% recommend you to play vanilla, because modded loot is so prevalent that you don't care if you lose. And when you play too much of that, you're gonna play like a bot. Like you're gonna play like nothing matters, because nothing does matter. In vanilla, if you die a few times, you might lose everything and go back to rock, and you'll think twice before you act stupid. If you want to get worse in Rust, play in a Zerg. I would 100% recommend playing a Zerg. It'll make you want to quit the game. It'll make you feel like you're really trash. Unless you're playing on those like really competitive Zerg versus Zerg. But if you're a player that plays on a 20-man on a very small server, then you are going to get worse. And it's 100% fact. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think it's that complex to be really good with the new recoil. Because obviously, if you boil all of this down, is to pull down. Pull your mouse down. And you know how to use the guns. But yeah, I think that's everything that's on top of my head right now to make yourself better in this game. And if you practice, if you don't get tilted, if you have a good mindset, like there's no way you're not going to improve. However, one thing is, don't have gear fear, guys. If you roof camp all the time and you have immense gear fear and you're like afraid to take out your guns, you're never, ever going to be better at the game. You're just going to get worse and worse. You're going to be more afraid. You're going to play smaller. You will never be the player that you want to be. Always take out your weapons. Always roam. Always take risks. If you want to raid your neighbor, just send it, man. Don't be afraid to lose. Not being afraid to lose is way more important than wanting to win. The best players in Rust are tenacious. And they don't care about losing. That's why they win. But yeah, that's it from me. Hope you guys get better. Hope your wives are a little bit better after listening to my people talk. Bye.